Captain Minho Park looked out at the stars through the bridge window of his ship. The Serenity's dawn. For 2,000 years, humans had traveled between these stars in peace. No wars, no fighting, no killing, just exploration and friendship. With alien races across the galaxy, "Captain, we're getting close to Haven's Rest," said Dr. Hannah Kim from her seat at the science station. She was the ship's expert on alien cultures. Her job was to help humans and aliens understand each other. Better Nasho nodded. "Good. The people there have been waiting for our visit." Haven's Rest was a small human colony on the edge of known space. About 50,000 humans lived there, farming and mining. They had built schools, hospitals, and parks. It was a peaceful place where human children could grow up safe and happy. "The colony reports everything is normal," said Lieutenant Sunho at the communications desk. "The children are excited to meet real space travelers." Minho smiled. Always got excited about spaceships and adventures among the stars. He remembered being young once, dreaming of flying between worlds. Now he did it for a living, but he still felt that same wonder. Dr. Hannah pulled up pictures of the colony on her screen. "Look at this, Captain. They built a beautiful school complex. Over 800 children study there. The pictures showed bright buildings with large windows. Human children played in green fields under an alien sun. Some were very young, just learning to read. Others were teenagers, studying science and art. They all looked happy and safe. It's good to see humans thriving so far from Earth," Minho said. "This is what peace looks like." But peace was about to end. Far away in the dark between stars, ships moved with deadly purpose. The Zephyrian Galactic Empire had been watching humans for decades. The Zephyrians were not like humans. They thought differently. They believed in order above all else, feared chaos. To the Zephyrians, humans looked dangerous. Humans asked too many questions. They explored too much. They made friends with too many different alien species. The Zephyrian leaders decided humans might become a threat someday, so they chose to act first. Admiral Velkoth commanded the Zephyrian attack fleet. His ships were built for war, painted black and covered in weapons. He had fought many battles for the Empire. He had destroyed dozens of worlds that the Zephyrians called problems. "Target the education centers first," Velkoth ordered his captains. "Human young learn too much. They ask too many questions. If we kill them now, the adult humans will be too sad to fight back. They will surrender." Velkoth did not understand humans at all. Back on Haven's Rest, the morning sun shone bright and warm. In the main school, 12-year-old Yuna Choi was teaching younger children how to draw pictures of their families. She had long black hair and bright eyes full of kindness. "Remember to make your families look happy," she told the little ones. "Art should show love." 8-year-old Daeho Song sat in the back, drawing a picture of his father who worked in the mines. His father was often dirty from work, but Daeho drew him clean and smiling. In the picture, they were playing catch with a ball. "It's beautiful," Daeho Yuna said, looking at his drawing. "Your father would love to see it." Daeho grinned. "I'll give it to him tonight when he comes home." Neither Yuna nor Daeho knew they would never see their families again. The attack came without warning. Zephyrian ships dropped out of hyperspace directly above Haven's Rest. They were massive dark shapes that blocked out the sun. On the planet's surface, people looked up in confusion. These were not human ships. "Colony alert," the emergency system began to broadcast. "Unknown vessels detected. Please remain calm," and the Zephyrian weapons fired. Beams of energy, bright as lightning, struck the school complex first. The beautiful buildings with their large windows vanished in explosions of light and heat. 847 children died in seconds. They never had time to be afraid. Yuna and Daeho were gone. All the children were gone. On his ship. Still hours away from Haven's Rest, Captain Minho received the emergency transmission. The message was broken and filled with static, but he could see enough to understand what was happening. "No," he whispered, watching the colony burn on his screen. "This can't be real." Dr. Hannah covered her mouth with her hands. Tears ran down her face. "The children," she said. "All those children." The transmission cut to static. Haven's Rest was silent. Lieutenant Sun-Ho turned to his captain, his face pale. "Sir, I'm detecting multiple Zephyrian ships at the colony location. They're still firing." Minho felt something break inside his chest. For 2,000 years, humans had chosen peace. They had given up war. They had sworn to solve problems with words, not weapons. They had built a civilization based on kindness and understanding, and someone had just killed their children for it. "Send a message to Earth," Minho ordered, his voice hard as stone. "Tell them what happened here. Tell them exactly what we saw." The message traveled faster than light across the galaxy. It reached Earth in hours. It reached every human colony in days. 847 children, murdered while they learned and played and dreamed of the future on Earth. In the great halls of the Terran Federation, leaders who had never known war tried to understand what had happened. President Kyung Nam read the reports again and again, unable to believe them. "They killed children," he said to his advisors. "They specifically targeted children." "Yes, Mr. President," said Admiral Jisoo Lee, head of the Terran Defense Council. The Defense Council was not really military anymore. For 2,000 years, they had been more like space police, helping with emergencies and disasters. The Zephyrians claim humans are genetically unstable. They say we're a future threat to galactic order. President Kyung stared out the window. At Earth's blue skies, children played in parks below. They were safe here, but for how long? If the Zephyrians could attack Haven's Rest, they could attack anywhere. "What are our options?" he asked. Admiral Jisoo hesitated. "We could negotiate. Offer to limit our expansion. Promise to stay in our current territory. And if they refuse..." The room fell silent. Everyone knew the answer, but no one wanted to say it. Finally, President Kyung spoke. "For 2,000 years, we chose peace. Our children grew up never knowing what war meant. They were innocent and pure and good." He turned from the window, his face grave. "Now they're dead. Murdered for the crime of being human children." He looked at each person in the room. "I want to speak with General Taeon Bay." Several people gasped. General Bay was ancient, over 2,000 years old. He was one of the last humans who remembered the time before peace, the time when humans were something else entirely. "Sir," Admiral Jisoo said carefully, "General Bay has been in retirement for over 19 centuries. He's from the old time. I know exactly who he is," President Kyung said. "I think it's time the galaxy remembered who we used to be." The message went out that day, across human space, on every world and every ship. People heard the news. The Zephyrian Empire had killed their children. 847 innocent lives ended in moments. Humans everywhere stopped what they were doing. They looked at their own children, their families, their peaceful lives. And for the first time in 2,000 years, they felt something. Their ancestors knew well. They felt anger. Deep in the archives beneath Earth's surface, ancient machines began to wake up. Computers that had slept for millennia started running diagnostics. Weapons that had been locked away were checked and rechecked. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had chosen peace and why they were about to choose war. General Taeon Bay was very old, even by human standards. Life extension technology kept his body strong, but his eyes held memories of things most humans had forgotten. He lived alone on a quiet farm on Earth, growing vegetables and reading ancient books. When the call came from President Kyung, Taeyun was feeding chickens in his yard. He looked at the communication device and sighed. He had been expecting this call for 2,000 years. "General Bay," President Kyung's voice came through clearly. "We need to talk." "I know why you're calling," Taeyun said, scattering grain. "For the chickens, I saw the news. The children, will you come?" Taeyun looked at his peaceful farm, at the chickens pecking at grain, at the vegetables growing in neat rows. This was the life he had chosen after the old wars ended. This was what he had fought to protect. "Yes," he said, "I'll come." 3 days later, Taeyun stood in the Federation Council chambers on Earth. The room was full of leaders who had never seen real war. They looked at him like he was a relic from another time. In many ways he was. President Chiang introduced him to the council. This is General Tae-Yun Bey. He commanded human forces during the reconciliation. Wars. He's one of 12 humans alive who remember what we were like before we chose peace. The council members whispered among themselves. Some looked afraid. They had heard stories about the time before peace, but they had always seemed like myths. General President Kyung said, "Tell us about our options." Taeyeon walked to the center of the room. His steps echoed in the silence. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but everyone listened. "You want to know what our options are?" he asked. "I'll tell you. We can surrender. We can let the Zephyrians rule us. We can accept that our children died for nothing." The council members looked uncomfortable. Some nodded slightly, where Taeyeon continued. "We can remember who we used to be." "What do you mean?" asked Councillor Ji-won Park. Taeyeon smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "You think peace made us weak? You think 2,000 years of not fighting changed what we are inside? You're wrong. We didn't become peaceful because we were weak. We became peaceful because we were too strong." He gestured to the walls around. This building sits on top of the war archives. 50 levels underground, sealed away for 2,000 years. Down there are the records of what we did to each other when we fought. Down there are the weapons we built, the strategies we used, the technologies we developed. The room was completely silent now. "We didn't stop fighting because we couldn't win wars," Taeyeon said. "We stopped fighting because we were too good at it. We scared ourselves into peace." President Kyung leaned forward. "What exactly are you saying, General?" "I'm saying you have no idea what you're about to unleash," Taeyeon replied. "But the Zephyrians are about to find out." The council voted that same day. It was not unanimous. Some members still hoped for a peaceful solution. But the images from Haven's Rest were fresh in everyone's minds. 847 children, dead because they were human. The vote was for war. Dr. Sahi Park was Captain Minho's sister. While her brother flew through space on diplomatic missions, she worked in Earth's deep research laboratories. She studied things that most humans preferred to forget about. When the war vote passed, Sahi received orders that had not been used in 2,000 years. Ancient protocols activated. Deep beneath Earth's surface, machines that had slept for millennia began to wake up. Initialize Archive Level 1. Sahi ordered her computer. Begin weapons research restoration. Warning lights flashed red throughout the underground facility. Computer systems that had been locked away for 2,000 years started running diagnostics. Weapon designs that had been sealed away began loading into active memory. Sahi's assistant, Dr. Junho Kim, looked nervous. "Are you sure about this, Dr. Park? These weapons? The files say they were locked away for good reasons?" Sahi thought about her brother Minho, somewhere in space, carrying news of murdered children. She thought about Yuna and Daeho and all the others who would never grow up. "The reasons we locked them away are the same reasons we need them now," she said. "To protect our children, far from Earth." Commander Ginwoo Lee received his own activation orders. Ginwoo led a special group called the Void Hunters. For 2,000 years, they had traveled through deep space, watching for threats to humanity. They were soldiers, but they had never fought a war. Now they were coming home. Jinwoo's ship, Silent Watcher, had been in the dark between galaxies for 50 years. His crew of 30 had been monitoring alien communications, learning languages, studying technologies. They were the closest thing humanity had to a military force. "All ships," Jinwoo broadcast to the other Void Hunter vessels scattered across space, "return to Sol System immediately. Operation status. War." Looked shocked. Many of them had been born in space. They had never seen Earth. They had never imagined they would be called to fight. "Sir," asked Lieutenant Mireille Yoon, "what's our target?" Jinwoo pulled up the reports from Haven's Rest. The images of destroyed schools filled the main screen. Children's drawings scattered in the wreckage. Burned playgrounds where laughter had once echoed. "Everyone who thinks killing human children is acceptable," he said. The Zephyrian Empire was confident. Admiral Velkoth had destroyed the human colony easily. His intelligence reports said humans had not fought a war in 2,000 years. They had grown soft. They would surrender rather than fight. Velkoth sent a message to Earth. It was broadcast on all human frequencies, so everyone would hear it. Humans of the Terran Federation, his voice was harsh and mechanical through the translation device. We are the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. We've eliminated the genetic threat on Haven's Rest. You have 1 of your years to surrender completely. Submit to our rule, or we will eliminate all human colonies. This is your only warning. The message reached Earth during a council session. President Kyung listened to it with the other leaders. When it ended, the room was quiet for a long moment. Well, President Kyung said finally, I suppose that settles any doubts about negotiation. He stood up and walked to the communication console. The entire galaxy would hear his response. To the Zephyrian Empire, he began, his voice calm but carrying absolute authority. My name is President Chao Nam of the Terran Federation. You have killed our children. 847 of them. They were learning and playing and dreaming of the future. They were innocent. He paused, looking out at the stars. Through the chamber's great window. For 2,000 years, we have chosen peace. Chose it not from weakness, but from strength. Chose it because we knew what we were capable of when we chose war. We chose it to protect our children, and all children, from the horrors we could unleash. Another pause. Across human space. Millions of people listened. You killed our children anyway. So now you will learn why we chose peace in the first place. You will learn what happens when humanity chooses war. And you will learn that some mistakes cannot be undone. The transmission ended. In the depths of Earth's orbital shipyards, construction began on the first human warship built in 2,000 years. It would be called the Children's Requiem. It would be just the beginning. General Taeyeon stood on the observation deck watching the ship take shape. Welders and construction crews worked day and night. The ship was beautiful in a terrible way. It was built for one purpose. War Dr. Sahi joined him at the window. The weapon systems will be ready in 6 months, she said. The engines in 4. The armor plating is already complete. And the crew? Taeyeon asked. Admiral Yoon Ji-yoon will command. She's young, but she's studied the old battles. She understands what we're going to do. Taeyeon nodded. She understand what it will cost us? Sahi was quiet for a moment. Do any of us? No, Taeyeon said. That's why we stopped doing it. But sometimes, the cost of not fighting is higher than the cost of war. They watched the ship take shape below them. Soon, it would carry human warriors to battle for the first time in 2,000 years. Soon, the galaxy would remember why humans had once been feared across the stars. Soon, the Zephyrian Empire would learn that killing children was the one mistake you could never take back. The sleeping giant was awakening, and it was very, very angry. Admiral Yoon Ji-yoon stood on the bridge of the Children's Requiem as it left Earth's orbit for the first time. The ship was massive, built with technology that had been locked away for 2,000 years. Every system was designed for one purpose: to make war as efficiently as possible. Set course for the Korath system, she ordered her crew. Maximum speed. Korath Prime was a Zephyrian mining world, produced metals that the Empire used to build their warships. It was also far from major population centers. First attack went wrong. Fewer innocent people would die. But Yoonji had studied the old war records. She knew humanity's first attack would not go wrong. Admiral, said Captain Sang-woo Kim from the weapons station, all systems are ready. But I have to ask, are we really going to do this? Start a war? Yoonji looked at the picture on her command. Console showed Yoona Choi and Daeho Song. 2 of the children who had died on Haven's Rest. Their faces were young and happy and full of hope. They started the war when they killed our children. She said, we're just going to finish it. The Children's Requiem was not alone. Following behind were 12 other ships, each one carried back from the depths of space by the Void Hunters. These ships had been monitoring the galaxy for centuries, learning alien weaknesses, studying enemy tactics. Commander Jin-Woo Lee commanded the escort fleet from his ship, the Silent Watcher. His crews were the only humans who still knew how to fight. They had spent their lives preparing for a war they hoped would never come. Now it was here. Dr. Hannah, Kim worked in the ship's intelligence center. After watching the children die on Haven's Rest, she had volunteered for military service. Her job was to find ways to hurt the enemy without becoming monsters themselves. The Zephyrians think in groups, she explained to the other officers. They share thoughts through biological radio signals. Makes them very organized, but also very predictable. If we can confuse their signals, we can turn their strength into weakness. She had developed new weapons that attacked minds instead of bodies. Weapons that made Zephyrian soldiers forget their orders or become afraid of their own shadows. It was a kinder way to fight than using bombs and bullets. But Admiral Minho Park, now commanding the entire human war fleet, wondered if kind warfare was possible. He had seen what the Zephyrians did to children. Maybe some enemies deserved no kindness. The attack on Korath Prime came at dawn local time. The Zephyrians had sensors that could detect ships coming through hyperspace. But human technology had advanced far beyond what anyone expected. The human ships appeared like ghosts, phasing in and out of normal space. They struck the orbital defense platforms first, not with explosions, but with precise energy beams that simply turned off the enemy weapons. No life signs lost, reported Sergeant Woojin Kim from his assault ship. The defense platforms are disabled, but the crews are alive. This was humanity's new way of war. Disable, don't destroy. Capture, don't kill. Take away the enemy's ability to fight without taking away their lives. The Zephyrian garrison on Korath Prime tried to fight back, but their weapons couldn't lock onto the human ships. Dr. Hannah's psychological weapons made their commanders forget battle plans in the middle of giving orders. Their soldiers became confused and frightened. In 6 hours, Korath Prime was completely under human control. The mining facilities were shut down, the orbital shipyards were captured. The Zephyrian garrison surrendered without a single death on either side. But the planet was no longer habitable for Zephyrians. Human engineers had done something to the atmosphere that made it uncomfortable for Zephyrian biology. The enemy soldiers and civilians had to be evacuated to other worlds. "This is impossible," Admiral Velkov said when he received the reports. "Humans are pacifists. They don't know how to fight." His intelligence officer, a younger Zephyrian named Korthok, studied the data. "Sir, I think we may have made an error. In our assessment, explain. Humans didn't just defeat our forces. They specifically avoided killing anyone. They disabled our weapons, confused our commanders, and made the planet uninhabitable, but they didn't kill our people. This suggests military thinking that is... very advanced." Velkoth studied the battle reports. The human attack had been perfectly planned and executed. Every move had been calculated to achieve maximum effect with minimum violence. It was the work of masters, not beginners. "How is this possible?" he asked. "Our intelligence says they haven't fought a war in 2,000 years." Korthok hesitated before answering. "Sir, maybe that's exactly why they're so good at it." On Earth, General Taeyon watched the reports from Korath Prime with mixed feelings. The attack had been a complete success. No human lives lost, few alien lives lost, strategic objectives achieved. It was exactly the kind of warfare he remembered from the old days. "We're very good at this," he told President Kyon. "Maybe too good." "What do you mean?" Taeyon pulled up historical records on his computer. Images of battles fought thousands of years ago, when humans fought against other humans. Cities turned to glass. Planets stripped of life. Entire star systems reduced to empty space. "We stopped fighting because we were perfect at it," he said. "Look at these records," is what we did to each other before we learned to live in peace. That's why we locked away the weapons and swore never to use them again. President Kyong studied the images. They showed destruction on a scale that was hard to imagine. Weapons that could destroy planets. Ships that could crack moons in half. Soldiers who had been changed by technology into something barely human. "The reconciliation wars," Kyong whispered. "I thought those were myths. They were real," Taeyon said. "We fought them against ourselves. Humans against humans. We became so good at warfare that we horrified ourselves into peace." That's the question. now is, can we fight this war without becoming what we were then? The answer came sooner than expected. Dr. Hyunwoo Choi was Yuna's uncle. He had loved his niece more than anything in the world. When she died on Haven's Rest, something broke inside him that could never be fixed. Hyunwoo worked in Earth's deepest weapon laboratories. His job was to find ways to fight the Zephyrians without killing innocent people. But late at night, alone in his laboratory, he worked on something else. He called it the Planet Cracker. The weapon used principles of physics that had been banned for 2,000 years. It could reach across space and make a star go supernova. It could crack a world in half from the inside out. It could kill every living thing on a planet in seconds. It was exactly the kind of weapon that had terrified humanity into choosing peace. Uncle Hyunwoo. The voice belonged to Minji Choi, Yuna's younger sister. She had come to visit him at the laboratory. Hyunwoo quickly shut down his computer, hiding the weapon designs. Minji, what are you doing here? Working on to help the war effort. She was 15 now, old enough to understand what had happened to her sister. Double quotes. Just. Defensive systems. Hyunwoo lied. Ways to protect our ships. Minji looked at him with eyes that reminded him painfully of Yuna. Uncle, I know you're angry. I'm angry too. But Yuna wouldn't want us to become like the people who killed her. After she left, Hyunwoo sat alone in his laboratory for hours. The Planet Cracker weapon design glowed on his computer screen. With one push of a button, he could give humanity the power to destroy the Zephyrian homeworld and everyone on it. But he could hear Yuna's voice in his memory, teaching younger children to draw pictures of their families. Art should show love. She had said Hyunwoo deleted the weapon designs and went back to work on defensive systems. The war continued. Human forces struck at Zephyrian military targets across the galaxy. Each attack was perfectly planned and executed. The humans never killed unnecessarily, but they were devastatingly effective. Star systems that had been under Zephyrian control for centuries suddenly found themselves free. Alien species that had been enslaved by the Empire watched in amazement as human ships arrived to liberate them. The humans fight like angels, said Ambassador Thurik of the Altarian Republic. They have the power to destroy us all, but they choose not to. They only fight to protect the innocent. Other alien governments began to understand what was happening. The humans weren't just fighting a war. They were teaching the galaxy a lesson about power and responsibility. We need to stay out of this conflict, advised the High Council of Rigel. The humans are showing mercy to their enemies and justice to the oppressed. If we oppose them, we might not deserve the same mercy. One by one, alien governments declared neutrality. Some even offered to help humanity's war effort. The Zephyrian Empire found itself increasingly alone. Admiral Velkoth realized his mistake too late. By attacking human children, he had not made humanity surrender. He had made them remember who they really were. Who they really were was terrifying. Send a message to the Terran Federation, he ordered. Offer to negotiate. The response came from Admiral Minho Park personally, was broadcast across the galaxy so everyone could hear it. You had your chance to negotiate, Minho said. So that chance ended when you murdered our children. There will be no negotiations. There will be no treaties. There will be justice. And there will be peace. But only after you have been stopped from ever hurting children again. The war was far from over, but across the galaxy, everyone understood now. Humanity had returned to war not because they were angry, but because they were responsible. They fought not to conquer, but to protect. They fought because someone had. To stand up for the innocent. And they were very, very good at it. Soon Min-yoon was 19 years old when the war began. He had grown up on Mars Colony, where the biggest problems were dust storms and crop failures. He had never seen violence. He had never even heard of war until the day the news came about. Haven's Rest. Now he stood on the bridge of a warship, wearing a uniform he never thought he would need, preparing for a battle he never thought humans fought. First combat drop in 10 minutes, announced Captain Dong-woo Song over the ship's communication system. Remember your training. Remember why we're here. Sung-min checked his weapon for the 100th time. It was designed to stun, not kill. Human military doctrine was clear. Disable enemies, don't destroy them. But holding the weapon still felt wrong to him. For 2,000 years, humans had solved problems with words, not weapons. "You look nervous," said Private Kuyan Lee. The soldier next to him? Kuyan was older, maybe 30, and had volunteered for military service after his daughter was born. "I want her to grow up in a galaxy where no one kills children," he had said. "I've never hurt anyone before," Sungmin admitted. "I don't know if I can do this." Kuyan nodded. "Neither do I, but I know I can't let them hurt more children." The ship shook as it entered the atmosphere of Zelkron for a Zephyrian military base. Through the windows, Sungmin could see the enemy installations below. They looked like gray metal scars on a green world. The attack was swift and precise. Human forces dropped from the sky like falling stars, their advanced technology making them almost invisible to Zephyrian sensors. But when Sungmin saw his first enemy soldier, everything changed. The Zephyrian was young, maybe the same age as Sungmin. His alien face showed the same fear that Sungmin felt. For a moment, they stared at each other across a battlefield that neither had wanted to be on. Then training took over. Sungmin fired his stun weapon. Zephyrian collapsed unconscious, but alive. The battle continued around them, but Sungmin knelt beside his enemy and checked to make sure he was breathing. "He's just a kid," Sungmin whispered to himself. "Just like me." That night, after the battle was won, Sungmin couldn't sleep. Neither could many other young humans who had tasted war for the first time. Military psychologists called it innocence shock, the trauma of discovering that your species was capable of violence, even necessary violence. Dr. Young J. Park was one of those psychologists. She had set up counseling centers on human ships. Throughout the fleet, every day she talked to young people who were struggling with what they had seen and done. "It's normal to feel this way," she told Sungmin during his session. "You were raised to believe that violence was never the answer. Now you're being asked to use violence to protect innocent people. The conflict between those two beliefs is painful." "But I have to fight," Sungmin said. "I have to stop them from killing more children." "Yes, you do. And the fact that it hurts you to fight is proof that you're still human. The day violence becomes easy for you is the day you've lost something precious." The psychological cost of war was spreading beyond the military. Back on Earth and human colonies, society was changing in ways that frightened many people. Myung Lee was a news reporter who documented these changes. She traveled from world to world, interviewing human civilians and trying to understand how the war was affecting their culture. "Music is getting darker," she reported from New Seoul Colony. "Art is becoming more violent. Children play games about fighting aliens instead of exploring space. We're changing into something we haven't been for 2,000 years. She interviewed Elder In-soo Kim, the keeper of the war archives. For the first time in 20 centuries, people were asking to see the historical records of humanity's violent past. They want to understand what we were like before the long peace, Elder In-soo explained. They want to know if we can fight this war without becoming monsters. He led Myung deep underground, to levels that had been sealed since the reconciliation. Wars ended. The archives were vast, filled with records of battles fought between human factions thousands of years ago. "Look at this," Elder In-soo said, pulling up a holographic display. It showed the Battle of Proxima Centauri, where two human armies had fought over the right to colonize the system. 50 million humans died in a single day. We used weapons that turned the very atoms of our enemies against them. The images were horrifying. Ships the size of cities, torn apart by weapons that existed only in theory now. Planets stripped of their atmospheres. Entire populations wiped out by biological weapons designed to target specific genetic markers. And this, Elder In-soo continued, is why we chose peace. We weren't afraid of aliens conquering us. We were afraid of what we would do to each other if we kept fighting. Myung studied the records with growing unease. "Are we becoming like this again?" "Not yet," Elder In-soo said. "But the potential is there. It's always been there. The question is whether we can win this war while keeping our souls." The war continued across 17 star systems. Human forces had cut the Zephyrian Empire in half, liberating dozens of worlds and freeing millions of enslaved aliens. But the victories came with a price that was harder to measure than casualties or destroyed ships. On the front lines, soldiers like Sungmin were learning to kill efficiently. The stun weapons had been replaced with more lethal tools as Zephyrian resistance grew more desperate. Each battle made violence a little easier, mercy a little harder. Captain Dong Wusong, Daeho's older brother, had become one of humanity's most effective military commanders. He led the assault on Zephyrian strongholds with tactical brilliance that impressed even General Taeyun. But Dongwu barely slept anymore, saw his dead little brother in his dreams, asking why the war had to continue so long. "We're winning," Dongwu told his friend Captain Min-jae Park after another successful battle. "The Zephyrians are retreating from 3 more systems, but I don't feel like we're winning." "What do you mean?" Min-jae asked. Dongwu gestured to their soldiers, who were celebrating another victory. "Look at them. 6 months ago they were farmers and teachers and artists. Now they cheer when enemies die. We're turning into what we fought to avoid becoming." The moral crisis reached its peak when Dr. Hunhua Choi made his terrible discovery. Working alone in his laboratory, he had found something in the captured Zephyrian databases that made his blood freeze. The attack on Haven's Rest had not been random. It had been a test. They wanted to see how we would react. He explained to the military leadership, Zephyrians had been planning to conquer human space for decades. They needed to know if we would fight back, and how effectively. Admiral Minho Park studied the intelligence reports, so killing our children was an experiment. Yes, and it worked perfectly. They learned that humans will fight when pushed. Far enough? Now they know our capabilities, our weaknesses, our moral limitations. They've been using our own mercy against us. The room fell silent. Every human leader present understood the implications. Their restraint, their attempts to fight a clean war, had been turned into a weapon against them. "There's more," Hyunwoo continued. "They're planning a final attack on Earth itself. Not to conquer it, but to destroy it completely. They want to eliminate humanity as a threat forever." General Taeyun closed his eyes. "How long do we have?" 6 months? Maybe less. Unless... Unless what? Hunwoo pulled up new weapon designs on his computer. Not the planet cracker he had deleted months ago, but something almost as terrible. "I can give you weapons that will end this war in days. Weapons that will make the Zephyrians surrender immediately." The designs showed orbital bombardment systems that could glass entire worlds. Biological weapons that could target Zephyrian genetics specifically. Nanite swarms that could disassemble enemy fleets at the molecular level. "These are weapons from the old archives," President Kyong realized. "The ones we locked away after the Reconciliation Wars." "Yes," Hunwoo said. "I've improved them, made them more efficient, more deadly. We use these weapons, the war ends tomorrow. But we become exactly what the Zephyrians said we were." Finished Admiral Jisoo Lee, a threat to galactic order. The debate that followed lasted 3 days. Military commanders argued for efficiency. Politicians argued for restraint. Philosophers argued about the nature of necessary evil. Religious leaders prayed for wisdom that seemed impossible to find. Meanwhile, intelligence reports confirmed the Zephyrian final offensive was beginning. A massive fleet, larger than anything ever assembled, was moving toward Earth. The estimated time of arrival, 47 days, Sungmin Yoon. Now, a sergeant, after months of combat, received emergency orders to return to Sol System. As his transport ship traveled through hyperspace, thought about how much he had changed since the war began. He could kill now without hesitation, could watch enemy ships explode without feeling guilt. He could make decisions that sent other young soldiers to their deaths. The innocent boy from Mars colony was gone, replaced by someone harder and colder. But when he closed his eyes, still saw Unichoi and Daeho's song in the news footage from Haven's Rest. He still remembered why the war had started, and he still believed that some things were worth fighting for, no matter what it cost. "What are we becoming?" he asked his reflection in the transport ship's window. The stars offered no answer. On Earth, the final decision was made in a room deep beneath the Federation Council chambers. President Kyung sat alone with General Taiyun, weighing the fate of humanity and perhaps the galaxy itself. If we use the old weapons, we win immediately, Kyung said. But we become the very thing we've spent 2,000 years trying not to be. If we don't use them, Earth dies and humanity probably ends, Taeyeon replied. The Zephyrians aren't interested in conquest anymore. They want extermination. There has to be another way. There is, Taeyeon said quietly. But you won't like it. He pulled up tactical plans that had been developed in absolute secrecy. We make them think we'll use the planet-killer weapons. We convince them that humanity is about to become the monster they fear. And then, at the last moment, we show them mercy instead. A bluff? You want to threaten the entire galaxy? I want to save it, Taeyeon corrected. Sometimes the threat of ultimate violence is the only thing that prevents it. The need for ultimate violence. President Kyung stared at the plans for a long moment. Outside, Earth turned peacefully in space, unaware that its fate was being decided in a buried room by two old men who had never wanted to make such terrible choices. Do it, he said finally. But pray to whatever gods still listen that we never have to follow through. The message went out the next day, broadcast on all frequencies across the galaxy. Humanity's ultimatum was simple and terrifying. Withdraw your forces from Sol System within 30 days, or face the complete destruction of your homeworld and every Zephyrian military installation in the galaxy. This is not a negotiation. It is a statement of fact. We have the weapons. We have the will. We will not allow another human child to die. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if humanity would cross the line from protector to destroyer. In 47 days, they would. Have their answer? The Zephyrian war fleet arrived at the edge of Sol System exactly on schedule. 3,000 ships, carrying weapons capable of cracking planets and boiling away oceans. Admiral Velkoth commanded from his flagship, the final authority, confident that humanity would surrender when faced with overwhelming force. Begin the attack, he ordered. Target Earth first. Make it quick. But as his fleet moved deeper into human space, something strange happened. The expected human resistance never came. No massive battle fleets rose to meet them. No orbital defense. Platforms opened fire. Sol System seemed almost empty. Where are they? Asked his tactical officer, Korthak. Our intelligence reports said humans had built hundreds of new warships. Galactic studied his sensor displays. Earth hung in space ahead of them, blue and beautiful, and apparently defenseless. They're hiding, cowards. When they see our fleet, they'll surrender, just like we predicted. He was wrong. The human ships didn't rise from behind planets or decloak from stealth fields. They simply appeared, materializing out of empty space, as if they had been there all along. 50 ships, small compared to the Zephyrian fleet, but built with technology that had been locked away for 2,000 years. Leading them was the Children's Requiem. With Admiral Yoon Ji-yoon in command, Zephyrian fleet, her voice came across. All communication channels, calm and clear, this is your final warning. Withdraw from Sol System immediately or face the consequences. Velkoth laughed. 50 ships against 3,000? Have humans forgotten how to count? Open fire on the human vessels, he ordered. Show them what real power looks like. The Zephyrian weapons fired in perfect coordination. Beams of energy that could vaporize moons struck the human ships, ... and passed right through them without effect. What? Velkoth stared at his displays in confusion. How are they still there? On the bridge of the Children's Requiem, Admiral Yoonji watched the enemy weapons harmlessly phase through her ship. Phase shields holding steady, reported her tactical officer. They can't touch us. Return fire, Yoonji ordered. Targeted strikes only. Disable their weapons and engines. The human ships struck back with surgical precision. Their weapons were different from anything the Zephyrians had seen. Instead of crude energy blasts, they fired streams of directed gravity. Controlled quantum disruptions, manipulated dark energy in minutes. Half the Zephyrian fleet was dead in space, their weapons disabled and their engines offline. But every ship's life support remained functional. Every crew member was alive. It's impossible. Velkoth whispered. These are weapons from myth, from the old stories about the human wars. On Earth, President Kyong watched the battle from the command center deep beneath the Federation Council chambers. General Taeyon stood beside him, his face grave. Phase shields, gravity weapons, quantum disruptors, Taeyon said quietly. We used these same weapons against each other 3,000 years ago. This is what we were before we chose peace. We doing the right thing? Kyong asked. Before Taeyon could answer, a new voice spoke from behind them.
You're doing what you have to do.
They turned to see Minji Choi, now 18 years old, and the elected representative of the Children's Memorial Foundation. She had been given special permission to witness the final battle. Mingi, President Chung said, you shouldn't be here. This is too dangerous. My sister died to start this war, Minji replied. I have the right to see how it ends. In space. Above Earth, the battle was reaching its conclusion. The Zephyrian fleet was completely disabled, their ships floating helplessly while human vessels surrounded them like wolves around fallen prey. Admiral Velkoth's flagship was the last to fall. As his weapons systems died and his engines went offline, he realized the terrible truth. Humanity had not grown weak during their 2,000 years of peace. They had grown stronger. Admiral Korthak said from his station, incoming transmission. From the human commander, Velkoth's main screen activated, showing Admiral Yunji's face. She looked young, but her eyes held the weight of accumulated knowledge from millennia of human warfare. Admiral Velkoth, she said, you have two choices. Surrender unconditionally and face trial for your crimes, or watch your entire fleet be destroyed in the next 60 seconds. You're bluffing, Velkoth said. Humans don't kill prisoners. You're right, Yunji agreed. We don't. But you're not prisoners yet. You're still combatants who refuse to surrender. The laws of war are very clear about what happens to combatants. New ship appeared on Velkoth's sensors, was massive, larger than anything in either fleet. And it was powering up weapons that registered as impossible on Zephyrian instruments. That's the world's end, Yunji continued. It carries a single weapon system designed to destroy planets. We built it specifically for you, Admiral, specifically for this moment. Velkoth felt something he had never experienced before. Pure terror. The weapon readings were off his scale. If the humans fired that weapon, it wouldn't just destroy his fleet. It would crack moons, boil away atmospheres, and leave the entire Sol system uninhabitable. You wouldn't, he whispered. You wouldn't destroy your own homeworld to stop you from killing more children. Youngji's voice was absolutely certain. Yes, we would. Gah. In the command center beneath Earth, Mingi Choi stepped forward. President Koyang, may I address the Zephyrian fleet? Mingi, this isn't please, she said. Let me speak for my sister. President Kyong nodded slowly. Open a channel to all ships. Mingi took a deep breath and faced the communication system. When she spoke, her voice carried across space too. Every ship in both fleets. My name is Minji Choi, she began. My sister Yuna was 12 years old when your people killed her. Bod. She was teaching younger children how to draw pictures of their families. She told them that art should show love. Duh. Communication channels were completely silent. Thousands of alien warriors listened to a human girl talk about her dead sister. Yuna never hurt anyone, Minji continued. None of the children you killed ever hurt anyone. They were innocent. They were pure. They were the best of what we could be. Her voice grew stronger. She killed them because you thought we were dangerous. You were right. We are dangerous. But not because we're violent. We're dangerous because we remember. We remember every child you murdered. We remember every dream you destroyed. We will never, ever let it happen again. She paused, looking directly into the camera that broadcast her words across the galaxy. Admiral Velkoth, your fleet is defeated. Your empire is broken. Your people will face justice for what they did. But I'm going to ask my government to show you mercy. Not because you deserve it, but because my sister would have wanted me to. The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Admiral Velkoth made his choice. All ships he broadcast to his fleet, stand down. We surrender. the Zephyrian. War ended not with explosions or destruction, but with silence. 3,000 enemy ships floating dead in space, their crews alive and unharmed. 50 human vessels keeping watch over them, their terrible weapons powered down but ready. And in the center of it all, Earth turning peacefully in its orbit. Its children safe once again. The trials began 3 months later. The Galactic Council, representing every major alien civilization, convened to judge the Zephyrians for their crimes. The evidence was overwhelming. The massacre at Haven's Rest was just the beginning. Intelligence gathered during the war revealed decades of similar attacks on other species. Mingi Choi addressed the council as the representative of all human children who had died in the massacre. Her speech, later known as the Never Again Doctrine, became the foundation for new galactic laws protecting young beings of all species. "We learned something terrible during this war," she said to the assembled alien representatives. "We learned that evil exists, that there are beings who will kill children to achieve their goals. But we also learned something wonderful. We learned that good people will fight to stop them." The Zephyrian Empire was dissolved. Its former territories were placed under Galactic Council supervision. The war criminals faced justice, and new laws were written to ensure that what happened at Haven's Rest could never happen again anywhere in the galaxy. But the hardest choice still remained. What would humanity do with its awakened military power? The debate lasted months. Some argued that humans should become the galaxy's protectors, using their advanced weapons to maintain peace. Others insisted that humanity should disarm again, returning to the pacifist ways that had served them for 2 millennia. The decision was made by the people who had paid the highest price for the war. The soldiers who had fought it. Sergeant Sungman Yoon, now a veteran of a dozen battles, spoke for millions of human warriors when he addressed the Federation Council. "We became soldiers to protect our children. We learned to fight so that others wouldn't have to. We became weapons so that weapons would never again be turned on the innocent. Our job is done. It's time to go home." One by one, human warships powered down their weapons and returned to Earth's orbital shipyards. The advanced military technology was once again locked away in the deep archives. The soldiers went back to being farmers and teachers and artists. But this time was different from the end of the Reconciliation Wars. This time, the galaxy knew what humans were capable of when pushed too far. This time, everyone understood that. Humanity's choice of peace came from strength, not weakness. Captain Dong Wusong, Daeho's older brother, was the last military commander to stand down his forces. As he watched his ship being converted back to peaceful purposes, he thought about his little brother who would never grow up. "We won," he said quietly to the picture of Daeho on his desk. "The bad people can't hurt children anymore. You can rest now." 5 years after the war ended, Captain Minho Park retired from space service and returned to Earth. He bought a small farm in the mountains, where he grew vegetables and tended a special garden. The garden was planted in the shape of Korean characters, spelling out the names of all 847 children who had died at Haven's Rest. Flowers bloomed there in patterns of incredible beauty, tended by the man who had witnessed their deaths and helped avenge them. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see the memorial garden. Humans and aliens alike walked quietly among the flowers, reading the names and remembering what had been lost. But they also remembered what had been gained. The galaxy was safer now. Children of all species grew up under the protection of laws that had been written in human blood and alien tears. The Terran doctrine that those who harm the innocent will face absolute justice was respected by every spacefaring civilization. On the 5th anniversary of the massacre, Minji Choi returned to Haven's Rest. The colony had been rebuilt as a multicultural world where children of dozens of different species learned and played together. At the center of the colony stood a memorial made of stone that would last 10,000 years. Carved into the stone were 847 names, human children who had died for the crime of being human. Below their names was a single line in letters tall, enough to be seen from orbit. "Their innocence ended our own, so that others might keep theirs." Minji placed flowers at the base of the memorial, one for each child who had died. As she did, She whispered the words her sister had spoken so long ago. Art should show love. The flowers bloomed in the alien sunlight, beautiful and eternal. A promise to all the children of the galaxy that someone would always fight for them, someone would always remember them, someone would always love them. The war was over. Peace had returned, and humanity had learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes, to preserve what you love, you must become what you hate. But the greatest victory is choosing to become something better again in the memorial garden on Earth. Flowers spelled out names in Korean characters. In the rebuilt schools of Haven's Rest, children of 100 species played together. Deep archives beneath human worlds, weapons slept once more, waiting for the day they might be needed again, but everyone hoped that day would never come. Everyone hoped that the lesson had been learned. Everyone hoped that the children's sacrifice had bought a peace that would last forever. Only time would tell if they were right.